As the ancient X-Siren planet revolved silently in its orbit, the stars overhead were chilly and uncaring. X-Siren, a race of tall, ferocious warriors who were famed for their love of hunting, had found the ultimate prey. They weren't drawn to the exotic animals that lived in their world. Instead, they were looking for something more difficult, something that would really put their abilities to the test. When they first came across humans, they discovered their new fascination. One such human, a Green Beret named Sergeant Jack Hawk Hawkins, had been a curiosity, a small primitive species that had somehow managed to escape their planet and explore into the stars. Hawkins had been part of an elite human military operation, one that had gone terribly wrong, leading to his capture by the X-Iron. They thought it would be an easy hunt. The soldiers of the X-Iron Dominion were the best in the galaxy, known for their physical prowess and brutal hunting tactics. They had hunted and killed the fiercest creatures across countless worlds, but they had never met someone like Hawkins. Sergeant Hawkins was no ordinary soldier. He was a Green Beret trained in guerrilla warfare, survival, and combat tactics. His mind was as sharp as a blade, and his body was honed for the worst conditions. He had been trained to survive in the most hostile environments, and now the X-Iron had made the mistake of turning him into their prey. They dropped him on the planet, armed only with a basic survival pack. The X-Ear were confident that within a few hours, they would have him their prize trophy. They thought the game would be simple track hunt and kill. They didn't realize they were about to face a nightmare of their own making. The first few days were calm, almost too calm. Hawkins did what he did best. He vanished, took advantage of the X-Iron's arrogance, and built traps using their own technology to trick them into chasing false leads. He was always one step ahead of them, understood their thoughts, their movements, and, most importantly, knew how to take advantage of their flaws. The X-Iron soldiers were accustomed to being the hunters rather than the hunted, and they soon discovered that Hawkins was not easy to find. The more they looked for him, the more frustrated they got, and every attempt to apprehend him ended in failure. Frequently, with Exxon soldiers killed or injured, their corpses left as grim trophies for the Green Beret's cunning traps. Hawkins, struck in the dead of night, knowing that the Exxon had a stronghold tucked away in the planet's dense forests. Their conceit had made them think they were untouchable in their own land. Hawkins had been observing their patterns, understanding the base's layout, and waited for the ideal opportunity for the past week. The X-Iron were asleep when he used his military training to sneak into their compound and remove their guards one by one. By the time the exile realized something was amiss, it was too late. Their communications had been cut off, and their centuries-old security systems couldn't match the expertise of a man who had lived his entire life in the shadows of war. The exile soldiers were in a state of panic, and they were paying the price. He sabotaged their weapons, their supply caches, and their transports. He was relentless, moving with the speed and precision of a predator, and the X-Iron, who had once considered themselves the galaxy's top hunters, were now the prey. The next phase of the game started as the exile mustered their forces. Hawkins vanished once more. This time he wasn't just avoiding them, he was hunting them. The Green Beret used his expertise in guerrilla warfare to trap and kill them one by one. Each kill served as a warning that, although they may have had the upper hand once, they were no longer the top predators in this situation. The X-Iron soldiers, who had once been full of pride, started to fear the ground they walked on because their hunter instincts told them they were being pursued, but they were unable to locate Hawkins every night. The bodies of their comrades showed up, stripped of their armor and weapons, and frequently had their insignias carved into the ground close to their corpses. Each death was brutal, efficient, and personal, and as the days turned into weeks, the Exirians started to realize that they weren't playing a game anymore, but were fighting for their lives. The Green Beret had turned the tables. It wasn't just a man. It was an entire war machine wrapped into one lethal package, and then it came down to the final hunt. The last group of X-Iron soldiers had cornered Hawkins in the mountains, their leader. A hulking brute named Draxar, who had once boasted about the inevitable fate of the humans, stood at the head of his remaining soldiers. The Green Beret was nowhere to be seen, but they knew he was close. They could feel it. Draxar sneered his muscles. Rippling under his combat armor, the human has nowhere left to run. This ends, now he ordered his troops to close in. But Hawkins wasn't running. He had been waiting for this moment. The battle was over before it began. Hawkins, using his military training, had prepared an ambush. He attacked with the ferocity of a storm, eliminating Draxar and his soldiers in a flurry of well-placed explosives and silent takedowns. When it was over, the Exaran soldiers were scattered, their once pristine hunting gear reduced to scraps, their bodies laying in a grim circle. Hawkins stood among them, his face grim but resolute. He had survived. He had turned the tables and hunted his would-be hunters to extinction as the final Exiron lay dead at his feet. He spoke to the void of space, as if the entire galaxy needed to hear it. You think you can hunt us? You think you can play with us like we're your toys? Well, let me tell you something you can't. Humans don't just survive. We fight and we win. The planet was silent after that. The eerie stillness a stark reminder of the Exiron's arrogance. They had sought to hunt the human for sport, but in the end it was the human who had hunted them. Sergeant, never underestimate humanity, Jack Hawk Hawkins said as he stood triumphant on the battlefield, knowing that he had sent a message that would reverberate throughout the galaxy.